welcome to the first episode of Darwin'z Theory. My name is Darwin, and this is my theory. I'm just trying to be the voice that I should have listened to years ago. How I'm going to achieve that? Well, I'm going to speak for anyone who's willing to listen. On today's episode, it's pretty much just going to be an introduction. And pretty much, touch briefly on why I'm doing this, kind of give you a synopsis. I'm sure if you read the description, then you'll know why I'm doing this, but there's a lot to cover. And in many of the future videos, we're going to touch on many of the things I'll speak on tonight, but I'm just going to give you, a brief timeline of my life, from birth to where I am now, just to give y'all an idea of how I became the man I am today. I'm going to warn you that today's episode is probably going to be a little bit dark, well, at least to start. I'm going to try to make light of everything, but, it's not to make anyone feel bad or anything like that. It's more to, it's just facts. It's pure facts on how I grew up and where I came from. Sorry about that, guys. I had a call coming in, just the vibrating was driving me crazy. But back to where I was. So yeah, essentially I'm just going to drop a timeline of, my life and where I came from, essentially. Like I said, it's going to be hard to listen to. It's going to be hard for me to say, I'm not going to lie. As excited as I am to do this, I really am. It's something I wanted to do for a long time. I've always wanted to help people, to be honest. And I wanted to be a child and youth worker for the longest time. But unfortunately, I have a criminal record that doesn't allow me to do that. But that doesn't mean I can't find a way to give back to the community anyway. But yeah, so it's going to be tricky to listen to some of it, and I'm also very nervous, so you guys are going to have to bear with me. I'm hoping that this gets easier, but I'm a little camera shy, but also, with no camera, I feel like I'm a natural at this, so it's interesting, but like anybody would be nervous, explaining their story to the world. Well, I'm human, so I'm nervous, but anyways, when we start with the timeline, it's going to be tricky to listen to because, it was a dark start. But first, I'm going to kind of get into why I'm doing this, a few reasons. Like I said, I'm trying to be the voice that I should have listened to years ago. And like I said, I also really just want to help people. I hope to, give my knowledge of the things I've gone through, and I hope that, somebody can take that and do better for themselves. My main target audience is really anyone, entering anywhere from entering high school or even younger, people are getting into all sorts of crap these days at a very young age, and it's unfortunate. So I'm hoping that I can offer some level of guidance. But yeah, anywhere from entering high school all the way up until my age, and even beyond that, anyone who wants to listen. I know people who are older than me. I'm 28, by the way, may not even take my word for anything, but that's up to them. Like I said, I'm here to speak for anyone who's willing to listen. I'm also doing this for my mom. I just want to make her proud, and she always said I should write some sort of memoir, so that's what I'm doing here. It's also, a good therapy for me, right, to just talk about things. I'm a kind of person who likes to just sort things out in my own head, and I've learned to deal, right, like everyone does, but this is going to be good for me to just get things out, and I thank you to anyone who's willing to listen. This is actually, as well as being inspired by my mom, it's also inspired by a few YouTubers I've seen. It's one guy I listen to. He's just a natural storyteller. His name is Jay Williams. Let's Live Life. That's the name of his channel. And he's more of a prison-oriented channel that I'm going to touch on so many areas. The justice system is one of them, but that guy, just the way he talks, man, I could listen to him for hours. He's very motivational, and I feel like he's, with the experience he has, he really can help set people on the right track. So my goal is to do the same thing, If I can help even, 5 people change their life for the better, that would be amazing. So without further ado, let's get into it. So my timeline is going to start from essentially when I was in the womb. This is where it kind of gets a little dark just to start, right? Like my problems really started from being in the womb. So essentially, I was born in Ottawa, Ontario. I was born in 1993. And yeah, why I say my problem started when I was in the womb is because I was essentially an alcoholic from birth, because my biological mother drank while I was in the womb. So currently I have FASD due to that. I'll get to when I was diagnosed and all that later in the timeline. But yeah, so, not saying that, I had a hard life or anything, but yeah, I mean, it's not a good start, right? But I made do. But anyway, so from the age of 0, pretty much, I already had a problem with alcohol. That's the way I'm gonna put it. I've always been told it was one of my main crutches, and that I will always have a problem with alcohol throughout my entire life. And I'm more of I was always more of a binge drinker, but to the point where I would just do some stupid, crazy, wild shit. Like, it was just stupid. The amount of times I've woken up in a cell not knowing what I did was just unreal. And, future episodes are definitely going to touch on some of those stories. Some of them are sad. Some of them, I can look back and laugh about them. But, yeah, I'll get to that later, but essentially, I personally stopped drinking for my own good because I was worried I was going to wake up in a cell one day and, not be going home forever. And that's just a scary feeling. I don't ever want to go to prison again, and I don't ever plan to. So yeah, after that, I am, so my background is French Canadian and Native. So for the early years of my life, I lived, I believe, I don't know too much, but from my recollection and what I've been told, I believe, at age 1, I lived with my biological mother and father when they were still together. They were both alcoholics and both abusive in their own ways. At that point, I believe I lived on a native reserve for a while. I believe in North Bay, but it's a lot of mixed information. I have very little information about where it came from. But up until about the age of 3, where I do start to kind of remember stuff. Not very good memories, not gonna lie. But yeah, so that's age 1. Age 2, my other sister, her name is Donna. She was born, so we were together, and then age 3 roughly, my other youngest sister, Destiny, was born. And so me and Donna, we stayed together at that point, but I believe Destiny got separated from us at birth due to her own issues. I've still got to speak to her to see whether I can elaborate on those. But yeah, essentially from pretty much my earliest memory at, I believe, age 3, I remember a thing or two, and trying to be a kid. But my earliest memory, as being a kid, was when I was about 3 years old. Like, my dad was an abusive piece of crap. Not gonna lie, I'd like to say, I forgive him and I don't blame him, but I do blame him, nobody should ever be doing that to a kid. And, again, I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad for me or seek pity, but these are the facts, right? So my earliest memory, being a kid, was essentially having to call the cops on my dad because he was, he'd pull out the belt, but it wasn't I know a lot of the old school folks, they're like, oh, you're being bad, you deserve a bit of a whooping, which I don't agree on because, I think that spreads, kind of a generational abuse, right? You abuse your kids, there's a good chance that they're going to grow up to abuse their kids, and so on and so forth, and it's kind of how you create more evil. But, when this kind of stuff happens to you when you're at such a young age, it can really influence your life, and it can go one or two ways. You can either grow from that and be a better person and not want to do that stuff, or it can just eat you alive and you just become everything that you don't want to be, and everything that everything that your abusive parents were. And I mean, I don't blame some people for going down that path, I'm not gonna lie. you know, when it happens at such a young age, it can have such an influence on the way you think and the way you do things, right? So, I mean, it's crazy, but I'll get into this story maybe at a later date. But yeah, essentially, like, my father, he was very, very abusive. He used to like lock us in rooms and not feed us, and it was pretty nuts. I remember CAS getting involved at a very young age, and you know, they would take us away, bring us back for a little bit. And I just don't have very many good memories, but I remember, you know, having to call the cops on my sister, or not on my sister, but to protect my younger sister, because you know, I felt like we were in danger. It's hard to even remember the, you know, the exact details, but yeah, it was crazy. So then at that point, I remember the day when CAS just come and took us, and we never looked back. And it was like, I think I was about 4 years old at this point, and me and my sister Donna were at the babysitters, and yeah, CAS just came, took us away, and never looked back. They brought us to the doctor to examine our wounds and all that. So at that point, that was kind of relief. I'll never forget the lady's name. Her name was Magda, very sweet lady from Ottawa CAS. Pretty much saved my life the way I see it, right? And took me out of an abusive household. And you know, probably if she didn't get me out at that point, like who knows what could have happened down the line, right? Like I said, it affected me for years and years, like decades to come, and it took me a long time to get over it, but I'll get more into that later. Age 5, so at that point me and Donna were put into a group home. My younger sister Destiny, I believe she got adopted real young, like I said, from birth, so she was put into a good home pretty quick, which by the grace of God, you know, she didn't have to suffer at the hands of my abusive alcoholic father. And at this point, by the way, my mother had been unable to take care of us, so she just kind of was out of the picture. I don't really remember much about her at all. Yeah, so age 5, I was put into another group home in the Ottawa area. They were alright, but you could tell they really favored their own kids. Like, they weren't the greatest to us. And like, they were alright, they weren't the worst, but the unfortunate thing about that home is that we were visiting, I can remember one time we were visiting a family member's house, and I personally was actually sexually assaulted by a teenage girl, which, you know, now looking back makes absolutely no sense, but, you know, it's something you never forget. And, you know, I didn't really, like, know the effect it would have on me, but, you know, I'm going to touch on that later, but I just, you know, I have to add this into my timeline. It's not really something I want to talk about, and maybe later I'll be more comfortable doing that. But, you know, at the time, I didn't know what to think of it, because, you know, I'm just a fucking kid. But, you know, I know it affected me relationship-wise, and even with, you know, healthy sexual relationships, it really affected me down the line to the point where I don't really care for sex at all, to be honest. Like, do my thing, I don't know. But anyways, I'll touch on that later. At age 6, this is where things started to turn up a little bit. So we went to another group home. I'm not even sure why we got taken out of that group home. But yeah, I'm not sure why we got taken out of that group home, but we did, and it was more of a foster home, not quite a group home, but it might as well have been. But yeah, essentially after that point, we went to these people's house, also in the Ottawa area, and their names were Elaine and Dave, and they were, like, at that point, the first breath of fresh air I think that we had felt. Like, they welcomed us with loving arms, and, you know, I'll always remember them. Shout out to them if they ever see this. Like, you guys were great, and you guys were really good people. I remember, like, even in that household, at this point I was already affected. Like, from what I've heard, I was actually a very violent kid, and, you know, like, up until 8 years old, but at that point I didn't quite know what I was doing. I was told that I was just a very angry kid, and, you know, like, I didn't quite understand it, but now I definitely attribute it to the abuse that I faced, right? Because like when you're so young and you're getting abused, you kind of, I guess it's just like all you know, that's the only thing I can think of. But yeah, so I would, throw things at the other kids and just be very angry, kills me to this day. But I even, hurt my younger sister. I would throw things at her that I shouldn't have been throwing at my fucking younger sister. And these are the things that affected me and gave me anger issues throughout my life up until, and still things I deal with to this day. But I've learned to, get that all in check, because that's not the type of person I want to be. Like, my goal is to be a good person. I may have done some bad things in my life, but my goal is to be a good-hearted person at the end of the day. So fast forward another year at age 7, when I met my adoptive parents. Their names are Laura and David, and they're honestly like the most amazing people in the world. I was at Lane and Dave's, as I said. Those were the last foster home I came out of before I met Laura and David, which are now currently my adoptive parents. So they came down, I remember, one weekend and brought me back to Mississauga. That's how I ended up in Mississauga. They brought me back here for a weekend, and we all just clicked. Like, they took us back to the house and, let us stay there for a weekend. This is after coming to visit us, but I remember, like, instantly, I felt safe with them. I felt safe with them, and we did a couple weekends. I remember, driving along the 401 and thinking, like, this is such a long drive, and sorry guys, this is hard to talk about, but they essentially took us in, and then, like maybe not even a month later, they did the paperwork. I have actual dates in some of my paperwork, but they adopted us. They essentially ended up adopting us, and from then on out, it was a completely different life. That's where, I feel like life really, really started for me. And I always tell people I didn't really have much of an imagination as a kid. So, like when someone brings up like a TV show or something they watched in the 90s or whatever, like I can't really relate to some of that stuff, because it was dark for me as a kid, and I'm not trying to take away from, anything anyone else goes through. I'm just explaining my story. I know it's a damn shame what kids go through, like, still to this day. I don't know what gives anybody the right to think that they can abuse vulnerable people, whether it be women or children. It's not right. So yeah, essentially, age 7, year 2000, the date, November 2nd, 2000. I've got it tattooed. So these are the 4 wolves from my adoptive family. Mom, dad, sister, me. But yeah, that was the day I felt my life really began. Really started to feel like I had, I guess a normal life. Well, not necessarily. Like, it took me years and years and years to actually, like, appreciate what they've done for me and actually feel a genuine love for them, because, like, it felt like a losing battle, I'm sure, for them and for me for years to come. And even up until age 10, I was apparently still kind of violent. Like, this is hard to say. Well, I guess I'll touch on this in a bit, but essentially, like, they gave us, like, my adoptive parents saved my life pretty much, and I can't thank them enough. I'm forever grateful. Sorry guys, again, this is hard to talk about. It's been a long time since I've talked about this. Forever grateful. So essentially, like, right off the bat, they took us camping in Osler Lake Provincial Park up in Parry Sound, and that was just like a new experience to us, and because of that I'm forever into camping, forever into, knowing how to start a fire. Like, they taught us skills that'll stick with me for life, and it's honestly, they are the reason I am who I am today. Like, without them, I don't know where I could be. And I feel for the people who didn't have that opportunity. Hold on a second, guys. I gotta take a break. Sorry about that, guys. I just needed to take a break. All the stuff I was talking about was just weighing heavy on the heart. Like, not gonna lie, as soon as I went off camera, I just like kind of burst into tears. I don't know why. Like, it's like you have all these thoughts in your head, but actually talking about it is a lot harder than you might think. So yeah, I just needed to sleep that one off, to be honest. And you know what, it kind of felt great. It's been a long time since I cried. It's okay if men cry. It's okay to show your emotion as a man. Like, I think we need to normalize that, but that's an issue for another day. So yeah, let's just get right back into it. So I'm just gonna, kind of go away from what I was talking about, because obviously that made me emotional, and I think you guys got the picture. So I'll continue to, between 8 and 10 years old, essentially. So me and my sister Donna, like I said, we were separated from our other sister, so we went into a new school in Mississauga, which is like pretty crazy for us. It was definitely a new experience, and leaving behind old friends that I had made in the first grade. So I was like halfway through the second grade when I was adopted and put into a new school, so that was interesting. I did make some good friends, and my teachers and all that were pretty welcoming, so that was good. I'm just going to kind of give you the gist of those couple of years, pretty much like 8 to 12. Essentially, I was a troublemaker in school. I used to get into trouble. Anything you could think of in school, I would do it. Like, we had like divided classrooms, so I would like throw things into other classrooms. I was just like literally a little shit. That's the best way I can describe it. And I don't think anyone that any of my teachers or anything like that would disagree with that. So yeah, essentially I'm gonna kind of get into, like, as I said, I'm gonna touch base and dive deeper into these issues. I'm just trying to give you like a synopsis. But one thing that really stuck out with me is the first time that I felt guilty about something. So that was like huge for me, and it continued for years, as crazy as that sounds. Like I said, right, like I don't really feel like I felt much emotion until I started to feel guilt, and it felt like the worst feeling to me. But my parents explained to me that that's actually a really good thing, and it means you know right from wrong, right? And so this is a story I'm gonna tell. I'm gonna kind of pause it. I think I was like, how old was I? Probably grade 6, and me and a friend that I had met, he was a little bit of a troublemaker too. We would kind of go out, and like this is pretty much when I started stealing from the store, like stealing from Dollarama, just candy and stuff like that. Wasn't the best thing to be doing, but I thought it was a good idea at the time, clearly. But I remember one day I stole some matches from Dollarama, and we were behind the Dollarama just flicking, like, cause we used to also go into the dumpster, and cause they would always like throw out fresh candy and stuff. And I remember he was sitting on top of the dumpster, and I was flicking matches at him, not even thinking about what could happen. And yeah, I started a big fire in the dumpster, and I didn't realize it until I came back like 10 minutes later to go back and get more candy, and came back and the dumpster had like fucking 10-foot flames, and I was like, holy shit. And I did not know what to do with myself. I was like beside myself at the time, right? Because when you're young and you do something like that, like I could have killed people. Like I didn't think about it at the time, Before that, like I did not know the feeling of guilt. Did not really know much emotion at that point, to be honest. Like all I knew was anger. I could think back to even after being adopted, I still, had violent outbursts, which is pretty fucked up for a kid to do, to be honest. And as I said, that continued throughout my later years, but in the later years I felt like, some of that anger was justified, even though it really never was, unless like, certain situations. But Um, yeah, so I set the dumpster on fire, and I remember sitting, I don't even know why I didn't get out of there, because I was like, just in shock. And I remember sitting across and watching all the fire trucks pull up and just being so scared and feeling so bad for it, to the point where like I went home, and for the longest time I didn't know what to do. Like I'm like, I have to tell somebody. It was eating me alive. So I remember my mom came into my room, and I was just like in tears, and I had to tell her. And she was okay with it. Well, she didn't, obviously wasn't like okay with it, but she was okay with the fact that I felt like I had to tell her. She felt like that was a step in the right direction. So I feel like that was an important part of my life. And it's weird, because from then on out, like, I used to drive myself crazy with any little bad thing I did. It was weird for like a couple of years. It's probably like 11, 12 years old, and I used to just feel bad about any little bad thing I did, to the point where I just felt, as crazy as this sounds, it's like, felt like I had to tell my mom every bad thing I did, to the point where it would just eat me alive. Like guilt would eat me alive over things like you should feel bad, but like things that shouldn't bother you to that point, but they did. Just about like if I had dark thoughts or anything, I would feel like I had to tell her. Stuff that a kid shouldn't be worrying about, to be honest. As crazy as that sounds, but I'm glad I learned to experience guilt at a young age, or like fairly young in my opinion, I guess, and it stuck with me. There's nothing wrong with feeling guilty for bad things you've done. You just gotta make sure that it's justified to feel guilty about some things, right? Some things, you shouldn't feel guilty for, like things like saying how you feel or doing what's good for you. Like, shouldn't feel guilty for being like selfish, in the sense that you're looking out for yourself. Not selfish as in like you don't care about anyone else, and it's always like you before anyone. Like, you guys know what I mean. But it's good to be like selfish as in you gotta put yourself first sometimes, and you gotta know what's best for yourself. That is a huge thing, actually, to being happy, in my opinion. Just looking out for yourself. But yeah, anyways, sorry if I like go off on tangents here, guys. I'm still, like I said, bear with me. It's not easy, but so another big moment in my life. This is middle school, and middle school is good for me, in my opinion. I had a lot of fun. Like those were what I consider the end of the simple times in life. Like that's when things were a lot more simple and life was better. But I remember also the first time that I experienced empathy, or at least that I can think of. I think I had experienced it before, but I remember somebody telling me something bad that had happened to a family member. I can't quite think about it, and I just remember like how well I could put myself in their shoes and feel their pain. And at that point, like, I didn't know what to think about it. I'm like I feel their sadness. It kind of like bothered me, but then I realized that was probably one of the best things that I could ever feel. Being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes is just an amazing thing. Like, it's hard to really and wholeheartedly be an evil person when you have empathy. I think that's literally one of the most important qualities to have in life, to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and try to understand what they're going through, because surprisingly a lot of this world lacks empathy. And that's how like serial killers and shit are made, right? Like, somebody who can do evil things and not feel bad, or not be able to put themselves in somebody's shoes. And I think like my empathy has helped me a lot in life, and made me want to help people and understand people's pain. It's weighed heavy on me sometimes, and I feel like I've helped people that did not deserve my help. In fact, I still do it to this day, and I'm learning like who to help and who not to. But at the end of the day, guys, it's always okay to help somebody. You always give somebody that first, second time, and if they just screw you, then at that point it's okay to cut them off. But don't ever stop helping people at the end of the day. And in that same sense, it's also okay to forgive people at least once, maybe even twice, right? Like, think about the people that have forgiven you, especially your family. A lot of the time, right? They forgive you and still accept you, right? So, but yeah, so that was very important for me. But now let's fast forward to going into high school. So previous to high school, I had actually gotten pretty good grades. Like I almost went to like a science and technology school and all that, but didn't quite make it. So I was doing pretty well all the way up until like even first semester of high school. I was doing great. Used to get pretty high marks, but second semester high school, shit just went down the drain. Started smoking, met the wrong crowd. Like there was a whole crew of like 5 of us. I still talk to one friend. He's actually a very close friend because he always had a good head on his shoulders. We did some shit together. We got into trouble, but he always had a good head on his shoulders. He's very caring and loving. I'm just gonna call him. Well, all I can say is Jacob. His name is Jacob, and he's a very good friend to this day. He's been friends with me since pretty much grade 8, grade 9. But there was a whole crew of us. I'm not gonna name anyone else, but there was a crew of 5 of us. Jacob being one of them, and then there was another female and 2 other males, and one of the males who was just like pretty much the ringleader of bullshit. He was one of the major problems. Just a dude with a mohawk and just a real piece of shit when I look back. Not saying people with mohawks are pieces of shit, but he was a real piece of work, man. And he really led all of us down the wrong path. I'm not saying that I take full responsibility for the path I went down, but he was a terrible influence at the time. Like just the shit we all got into. I feel like my life would have been a lot better off without him, but then I wouldn't have some of the experiences I have. I remember trying the first cigarette at this guy's house, smoking weed with this guy and all that. And so yeah, there was 5 of us, and now only me and Jacob are the only ones who really made it out of it okay. One of them, he's always a little bit down on his luck, but now he's addicted to fentanyl and heroin, and I don't see a good future for him, to be honest. I hope if he's watching this, he knows how much I've helped him down the line too, even after we stopped talking. But it's sad because he never wanted to help himself, and I hate to see that shit happen to people, man. Drugs like that are terrible. Like I wish he never started. And he started doing that like just from a night of drinking, but honestly I could have seen it coming from younger. He just didn't have the best influences, and I guess at that time I was just trying to have fun too. I've personally never touched heroin or fentanyl, anything too serious, but I've done my fair share of drugs, that being said. But yeah, essentially, so from this main group of people, one of the other females, same thing, fentanyl, heroin, and the dude with the mohawk, ringleader bullshit, as I said, he was already going in and out of jail at that point. Like the first time I ever went to jail was with that guy, actually, when I was like 15, I think that's the first time I went to jail. So I guess he showed me the ropes at that point, right? But fuck, I don't know really what happened to that guy, but I don't think it was good, to be honest, the way he was headed. I mean, I hope for the best, but yeah, I don't think it was going well. So yeah, that crew didn't turn out all right. I'm blessed to have really made it out. So yeah, there was that was really the start of my misery. From there on out, like I was smoking weed in high school, which honestly, guys, like I love weed as much as the next guy, but if you value your sanity and a clear-headed mind, and not like perma-frying yourself in a sense, like I totally wish I did not start smoking weed that young, to be honest. It caused so many mental health problems for me. I personally believe that. Like I said, there's a lot of good benefits to weed, but I don't think that people should be smoking it that young. It's hard because you wanna live your life and you wanna party, and I think that's valid, and I think that you need to have those experiences too. But like education is actually very important. You can still make something of yourself, but it's good to be educated. Like it's a good feeling, and you should never stop learning, in my opinion. And it's like some people pick up street smarts, some people pick up book smarts, you know what I mean? But like for me, it was to the point where I was smoking so much weed every day. I was skipping class, you know, your typical like stoner story, right? Skipping class. And I was just like, I used to be so good at math, but as soon as I started smoking weed, it stopped making sense to me. And it's not a good feeling, you know. Honestly, I felt really stupid, and to the point where I just started to detach, you know, and just became a stoner to the max, you know. Just always, we had this thing, I'm sure everybody in their high school has like a smoker's pit. We had this thing called the Bridge, and I was just always out there, and you know, a lot of good people made it out of there, and I'm not saying anyone's bad people or nothing, but you know, it was just, it's high school, you guys know how it goes, right? So my personal recommendation is that you save the weed until your brain's a little bit more developed. I'm not gonna lie, you know, it's hard. Even the alcohol too, man. Like, you really got to watch yourself, and you really got to think, because you know, you feel like when you're young you're invincible, you know, everything's all new and exciting, but you really got to think, even when you get to my age, like, a lot of those decisions I made still have an effect on me to this day, you know. I really dug myself a big hole, and as far as like weed being a gateway drug, I don't believe it fully is. The only way I see it as is that it's probably the first thing that you're gonna try that is like drug related, you know. For me, like, I was totally against smoking altogether, you know. My friends are always like, oh, just try it, but for a long time I held off. I didn't want to smoke anything. I felt like it goes back to that guilt stuff. I felt bad, you know. My mom always told me don't do that, so I felt bad about it, you know. And even after I did, I felt bad, but then I kind of just used the weed to numb that and stopped feeling bad. And that's kind of when I became a piece of shit again, you know. Like in high school, I was real hard on my parents. I really respect them for, you know, continuing to support me through all that. They just wanted what was best for me, and you know, not everyone realizes that. Not everyone, I think their parents are out to get them. And I realize, you know, some parents are very strict on their kids, and sometimes that makes them want to rebel, and it doesn't go good, you know. You've got to really have a sense of understanding for your children, you know. And I know every parent wants what's best for their kid, but you've got to understand that they're kids. You were kids at one point too, you know. Everyone experiments with everything, whether it be drugs, sex, drinking, you know. And now that we bring up drinking, that's personally what I think is the true gateway drug, because most of the people that I know that got into serious drugs tried it while they were drinking, right? Because drinking, it's honestly, alcohol is poison. I understand, you know, wanting to party and feel enlightened, and there's really nothing wrong with that, but if you are unable to handle your liquor, which a lot of people are, especially at such a young age, you probably shouldn't drink. And I understand, you know, like the social pressure to drink. I honestly do not know why alcohol is legal, or at least hard liquor and stuff like that. Like, I mean, I get it. Like, I drank for years and years and years, and had good times, but a lot more bad times, I'll tell you that, you know. I know, like, you know, shit gets crazy. You're at a party, shit just gets crazy, you know. It's easier to meet people. Like, I see the good things. I see why a lot of people choose to drink, right? But for me, I don't know, it just wasn't my thing, and I should have realized that a lot sooner. So, you know, you really got to think, like, if you can't control how screwed up you get when you drink, then you shouldn't drink, right? And it's a losing battle for a lot of people, and it's a lifelong battle, really. If alcohol is your problem, it's a lifelong battle. So I guess back to where I kind of went off on a tangent, I know, but back to where I was. So this is going in to grade 10. Shit's still hitting the fan. Actually, like that group of 5 I told you about, we all tried to run away to Nova Scotia. Maybe this is a story for another time. But long story short, we went the wrong way and ended up, you know, going the opposite direction. Cops found us eventually, so that didn't go so well. But yeah, being young and wild, right? But anyway, so going into grade 10, at this point I was fighting a lot in high school. Like, if I could bring up my school record, it was just stupid. Like, I was skipping all the time, I was fighting, I don't know what I was doing. I was just trying to fit in, I guess, and I don't know, like, I always felt the need to stand up for people, but sometimes I would not pick and choose my battles, right? So it got me into a lot of trouble, and actually halfway through grade 10, I got in a fight. A lot of people from high school probably remember it. And I pulled a knife on somebody, and it was essentially because they had robbed my friend. So I tried to do the same to them, and it just turned into a shit show. And there's like 100 people there watching this fight, and I pulled a knife. Not because I prefer weapons, but I didn't know who was going to jump in, because it's like I had a few people with me and he had a big crowd with him, so I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I didn't actually even get close to him with a knife, but I just kind of waved it around, whatever. And yeah, after that I was charged with like weapons dangerous. I was charged with robbery because I tried to rob him, didn't even succeed because it didn't go so well because I was a fucking idiot. So yeah, I was charged with weapons dangerous, robbery, and something else. I think a breach. And sorry, quick tangent here. The breach dates back to my very first charge, which is also a story for another time. But my very first ever criminal charge was with the same group of 5 I speak about from high school, and that was for stealing a freaking police badge. I'm sure you guys have heard of car hopping. This is the first time I ever went car hopping. Because that idiot with the mohawk took me car hopping, and I found a police badge. And I took it, and yeah, it turned into a shit show. But that's a story for another day. So yeah, back to where I was. I got charged with robbery, assault, actually, yeah, that's another one, and weapons dangerous. And that was the first time I ever went to jail. Well, actually, no, I didn't go to jail for that. I got held for a bail hearing. But it was crazy, like a whole big scene and stuff. Maybe I'll get more into depth, right? I'm trying not to go off on too many tangents here. But yeah, as a result of that, I had to go to court. I was the first time in a cell, first time, having to go up in a courtroom in handcuffs. And, I was so nervous to see my parents. They were having to come bail me out. Like, I would have rather stayed there at that point than have them see me in handcuffs and locked up like that. And I was about 15 at that time. But yeah, essentially after that I was expelled from all schools in Ontario. So not like your average kicked out, like I legit had to go to it's pretty much like a school court hearing, It was like, you had the principal, you had the superintendent, a whole bunch of these, I guess suit dummies, like school type people, and they legit expelled me from all schools in Ontario. And at that point, I didn't know what I was doing with my life. My parents were pissed, to say the least. But in the end, it ended up actually working out in my favor. That was the start. Well, that was the start of one of the many processes that led me to where I am today on a positive note. But keep in mind, it's like they say, you gotta fall down 7 times to get back up the 8th time. So yeah, I fell down quite a few times after that, and you really have a record at that point or nothing. But essentially I was taken to, so there's only one school I could go to, and that was called the Fresh Start program, the expulsion program, which gave you like a few school credits, which was good, but mostly they focused on human interaction and relationships and aggression and anger and all that good stuff, which actually ended up being really good for me. It was like a secure school, though. You had to get searched going in every day, and pretty much everyone I was there with, I ended up running into jail, or running into them in jail and down the line. They were like the worst of the worst in school, I'd say, right? Like everyone who's been expelled like that, essentially. But yeah, it ended up I can think back to a lady. Her name was Jane Lunny. Shout out to her if she ever sees this, because she did wonders for me. She really taught me a lot and was like a mentor at that point. And I kind of just adapted. At that point, I adapted a new outlook on life. I didn't want to be violent anymore. I kind of became a hippie at that point. Just all about the peace and love. That was at the start of my peace and love phase, I guess. And I wanted to do better, that was for sure. And at that place, I was actually free to express myself for the most part, which is really nice. And I was learning about abusive tendencies or toxic tendencies, or trying to justify things, just mental processes that a lot of people would not learn, and I'm grateful for that to this day. like justifying things as in like, oh, I did this, but it's okay because this person did this. Like that's a bad mental process at the end of the day. I wish I could go back and look at all the stuff I learned there, because I know I've forgotten some of it, but a lot of it stuck with me. Maybe I'll try to pull some of that up. I know I can't. I do have some old paperwork, but it was actually really helpful. I can say that like getting expelled was actually good for me, but it put me so far behind. Like, to be honest, guys, it took me 7 years to graduate, but I did eventually graduate. I just kept pushing, and you know, that's the one thing, like my mom said, do whatever you want with your life, but graduate. Just please graduate. And you know, I honestly did it for her at that point. I wasn't even doing it for myself, and I was just doing it for her to make her happy. But I'm actually happy that I did, because you know, I did go on to college and all that and actually get an education. So but yeah, essentially after that I completed the Fresh Start program. Took me about a year, and then I went on to another high school where it was kind of like kind of a bad high school too, you know, but at the end of the day I actually made a lot of good friends there that I'm still friends with to this day as well. So I'm glad that, you know, that's the way things worked out. Like I have solid friends that I met at that school. There's also some bad times at that school, and I kind of went back to my ways a little bit with the skipping and all that. So I believe I got kicked out of that school, and from there I went to an alternative school. Throughout all this time, I was just racking up a criminal record, to be honest. But I was still a youth at that point, so it wasn't as crazy. So yeah, from there I went to an alternative school, Peel Alternative School West up in Meadowville. I'm sure y'all have heard about it, or some of you may have. But I went there, and from there, like I met some good people there too. I was still kind of a delinquent at that point, but I know I had a better head on my shoulders than when I was younger. Still smoking a lot of weed, right, and skipping, but it was the alternative school that actually helped me graduate, you know. I do, like, there's something to be said about alternative learning, because not everybody learns the same. Like that really allowed me to learn comfortably and actually take things in, instead of, you know, the regular school system sucks for a lot of people, and you know, they don't even make efforts sometimes to accommodate people who don't learn the same way, right? Like I said, you know, I didn't always think clearly. Have, you know, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, which makes a big difference. It also makes you really impulsive. That's something, you know, I'm gonna do a full out episode on that. And but yeah, so I did the alternative school. At that point, I was about 18. Like I said, I graduated when I was about 20 years old, I think. But I was 18 at that point, and that's kind of when I discovered alcohol. Like, I remember I had a crazy summer with some friends, and shit just got crazy when I discovered alcohol. It got really crazy. Actually, thinking back to the first time I ever... Well, no, I'm going to leave this for another story, actually. The first time I ever drank, though, I blacked out hard. That's another story. I have way too many dumb stories, like, stories for days on dumb shit I did. Like, I'm like the guy that could black out and end up in another city, you know? It was nuts, absolutely nuts. But, so yeah, when I discovered alcohol, it's crazy because I was trying to quit weed, which is like the biggest mistake I ever made in my life. Trying to quit weed, I would have been better off sticking with that. Trying to quit weed and stick with alcohol, or try alcohol, because I thought, you know, like, I'm a more social person, this is better, you know, I like being social, I'm like meeting more chicks and stuff like that, and that felt great to me, you know, I'm having a good time, whatever, skateboarding, drinking, you know, it was fun at the time. Biggest mistake I ever made. Like, I mean, I had some good memories, but like I said, way worse bad memories. And the time I turned 19, like, I remember the day I turned 19, I showed up to school with a Mickey. Like, just put it right down on my desk thinking, you know, I'm 19 now, I can bring liquor to school. Nope, it's not how it works. And from then on out, shit just got crazy. Well, even 18 to 19, I was already in and out of jail. Like, I had already been to Maplehurst before I was even old enough to drink, for drinking related stuff, you know? So it was nuts. Like I could sit here and talk forever about separate stories. So as I said, I'm just gonna try to continue with my storyline here. I do wanna show you guys, like, I'm not bullshitting when I say I have a criminal record. Due to that, this is, so let me look at the first time, or let me look at some of my adult stuff here. Sorry about that, guys. Video cut off, so I was pretty much talking to a camera that wasn't recording for a good half an hour. So instead of reiterating all of that, I think I'm just going to turn this into a two-part series. As I was saying earlier, this is my freaking record. 90% of it, if not more, is alcohol related, you know, just dumb shit I did. So like every single entry on those pieces of paper is a story to tell, so I'm going to get into that. There's a lot of interesting stuff I'll be talking about in the future, that's for sure, but I think we're off to a good start. I'm really excited by this project, and you know, I think it can do good things. Like I said, if you know it can even help a few people, you know, steer them in the right direction, I'll be really happy and I'll feel fulfilled by this. So on that note, I think I'm gonna end it here, turn it into a two-part series, so look out for part 2. I'll probably drop that later this week, but you know, it's kind of emotionally exhausting talking about all this stuff, I'm not gonna lie, but you know, I feel it needs to be said, and it's also been therapeutic for me, so that's a good thing. Yeah, I thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to stay positive, keep your head up. You know, you can always turn your life around. There's never too late, no matter how much you've been through. You know, I know depression can get the better of people, especially when you just put yourself in a deep hole, but essentially part 2, I'm going to explain how I really got out of this hole and what I did to stop drinking. It was a wild battle, and you know, I slipped up a few times, even about 2 years ago I slipped up, did some shit I highly regret, but you know, at this point I'm 100% sober. You know, I will have the odd beer here and then, but even then that it's dangerous. But you know, I feel like it's few and far. There's a lot more things I feel I'd rather be doing on a Friday, Saturday night, and that's definitely not the bar or anything like that. You know, it drives me crazy sometimes. That's all my friends want to do, but for me, it's motorcycles, photography, urban exploration. Those are things I like to do. Like the thing I'm looking at and what you guys are watching me through is another big part of why I am the way I am today. So on that note, guys, I thank you for watching. If you would like to see more content, don't hesitate to subscribe. If not, that's cool too. But again, I appreciate anybody who watched this, and thank you for taking the time to hear me out on my knowledge of, you know, my life. And I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.